Good morning and welcome. It is Friday, and that means it's Functional Friday. Joining me today is Emily Hecker with Enlightened Functional Medicine, and this is your second time being a guest on our show. The first show is archived on our website, mysymbowl.com. And if you go under Find Your Inner Flavor and click on the podcast, you'll see all of our archived shows on there. And the show that we did with Emily the last time was all about keto, the keto diet. And then this is the second part that we're going into with Emily, which is on the topic of MTHFR. Emily, what does that stand for? What exactly does that mean?
I know, it's a complicated acronym. And technically, the acronym stands for Methyl Tetrahydrofolate Reductase. But really, it's a gene that makes an enzyme in our body to work. And it's getting a lot of popularity over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
And I find personally, and I have a little story with how I got into doing this, but many women get this tested because they have miscarriages, infertility, and the doctors, the OBs don't know why. And so they'll do this test to see, okay, do you have this gene which makes you at risk for having more clots, especially if you're pregnant and you have a placenta and a baby in there. If you keep having miscarriages, that could be one of the reasons why. So they prescribe a medication for that for you to take, which is actually just high dosages of the active form of a B vitamin called B9, which is called folate. And some people feel great and do great, and some people do feel worse when they do this. So it can kind of get into a big rabbit hole with that. But that is a little bit about just the basic, how people get into MTHFR.
Okay, so from my understanding, we're all carriers of this gene, correct?
Yeah, we all have it. It's okay. Like we all have it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that. It means that some people function fine with it and other people don't, correct?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we all have a genetic blueprint that God has given us when we are born. We have the blueprint to make our DNA. And the DNA is really just like an instruction sheet and saying, okay, how should we grow our cells? How should we develop and function with certain things? And so the MTHFR really is a component that helps formulate the blueprint and helps us process a leafy green called folate. And especially with Symbol, with what you do in your business, you guys sell awesome food, and it is rich in folate. And so that is the methyl, the folate is found in the leafy greens, and that gene helps us get that folate into our bodies so we can utilize it.
Okay, so how come some people have issues and other people don't when it comes to this? And how do you find out for sure if you're unable to break down these B vitamins?
Yeah, so why do some people have issues and some people don't? So, it really comes down to, there's a genetic component of this. Obviously, we're talking about a gene, but that gene needs all these different other factors for it to work properly. Kind of think of it like a factory. You need all the workers there. You need all the parts in order. You need the workers to be nice and eaten healthily. So you need all the pieces of it there to be for it to work properly. So you need to bring this you need to make sure that the MTHFR is working effectively so it can really optimize your DNA. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just getting you the right necessary tools to function properly.
So, because I guess where I'm confused is that some people will say, I've tested positive for MTHFR.
Yeah.
But other people are saying, well, I don't have that MTHFR. But if we all have it, what does that mean specifically if they're saying, I have this gene?
Yeah, so some people get tested and they have this gene, and some people have this gene and it's a polymorphism. So there's an inability that it's working correctly, but they never know it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say, it's kind of like we all have a car. And even though we bought a brand new car right off the lot, At some point, you know that car is going to have an issue if you have that car for 10 years, correct?
Yes.
So if you're buying a car that's used, meaning if we're in our 30s and we haven't been taking really good care of ourselves, and now here we are, that's kind of what I'm hearing you say, is that some of us are taking care of ourselves better at the very beginning and others haven't been. And at some point, we're going to break down.
Right. And even it may not be that you're doing everything you can, like you're eating awesome food, but it's the environment that you're living in. Or it may be that immunization, the vaccine can actually impact methylation, which is really an interesting topic by itself. But certain triggers can set off the inability for you to properly methylate. And that's a fancy term, methylation, but it's just a biochemical term that we use to say, how can we function better at an optimal pace?
So how does somebody identify and know specifically if they are breaking this down or they are not? Are there tests? Are there labs? How does somebody know this?
Yeah. So you asked a couple different questions there. So the first one was, how do they know if they have it? And then how do they know if they're breaking it down and using it? So the first one, if they know if they have it, there's different ways that people can get tested if they haven't gotten tested yet. There's a blood test that you can get, but it really is kind of a pricey one. I like to recommend people, because I like to save people money, right, is 23andme.com. You can go there. You can also go to ancestry.com. Even though they're marketing like ancestral information or health-related information, what I do is I extract the raw data from that. It's actually a saliva test, so easy for kids to do too. So you just get this. It takes about 6 weeks to get back. So that's how I recommend people to get it. I take that raw data that it gives back to you a couple weeks, 6 weeks or so after you have it done, and you can upload it into another program. Now, this is where it gets a little funky because there's lots of different programs that people will load it into. The one that I've used and I've been trained on, because I've been doing this for 5+ years just with MTHFR, is Dr. Ben Lynch, who is the naturopathic doctor, who is just leading this whole MTHFR revolution. He has his own program called Strategene, STRATEGENE, Strategene. And it's like $40. You just plug that information in, it pops out all relevant information. So that's how you can know if you have it or not. Now, the next question you asked was, how do I know if it's being utilized? So that's where you got to bring in some functional tests. And that's what functional medicine is, right? So we got to bring in some tests to see, how is that gene optimizing? And there's different things to do to bring that in to see, okay, well, how are you functioning in this aspect? One of them is just to do a blood test to see how your see how your anemia levels are, really, to see if you're B12 deficient. That is a huge component because B12 is a nutrient we get from meat. We have to get it from the outside sources, and especially if you're eating, it's simple. We need that protein in our diet to help optimize the function and really get that MTHFR gene working. So we need to see if we're consuming enough meat. Even if you're a vegan, make sure you're taking the B12. There's certain things that we need to do. So we can do blood tests for that. We can also do other blood tests to see what the end product is in this biochemical step process. So there's some nutrients that you can measure to see, okay, is that going through the gene? Is it going, think of it like a car system, or a road or a highway? Is it going through the barrier system, or is it stuck in traffic? And that's how I like to explain all these pathways, because I relate it to cars on the road and if there are blocks in the road or not. So different tests. There's a methylation panel from Doctor's Data that I like to use frequently. It is going to look at some cofactors. I'm just going to spit these out. SAMe, and SAW. It's going to look at even downstream from that magical gene called MTHFR. And I'm going to show you something here really quick, because this is, I don't know if you can see this or your viewers can see this.
Yep, it shows up good.
It's just a lot of biochemical pathways, and it's really complicated. But there's lots of genes on there, and it's not just one gene, it's lots. And all of those genes are doing the same thing that MTHFR is. So we need to make sure we're getting the right ingredients in to sprinkle it down to the next step of that. So there's lots of different functional tests to do too.
So is a regular, if you go to a regular medical doctor, say for your yearly checkup or you're having issues, are they looking at MTHFR, or is this something specific that is being worked at and looked at in the functional medicine side of things?
I think it's the key to that is that last part of your question is the functional medicine component. And we're getting more and more primary care providers that are getting more into functional medicine, and they will include this on their intake form. Not every doc will, and not every doc will say that this is a valid gene that should be looking into. And the research is there. And that is the key point too with this is many doctors that I get so many patients wanting to do this. They say, oh, you don't need to worry about that. You know, just take Deplin or just take some other medication for that. And that's not the case. You do need to make sure that it is being addressed. So not all doctors will address it, but some of us who are more wanting to learn more will.
Okay. So it sounds like a supplement is almost always needed in this case, which is a B12 or a B9 supplement, correct?
That's a tricky one too, because it's funny because when I got started into this, it was about when I just got out of chiropractic school and I was doing more craniopathy on infants, on babies when they were just freshly born and we were getting all their body in order, and mom would come in and say, "Oh, I have MTHFR," and they say, "Oh yeah, well my baby has tongue tie," and that's one of the things to look for as a mom or a parent, or if you have a tongue tie, and a tongue tie is where the bottom of your tongue is stuck to the bottom of your mouth. You actually need to have it surgically separated. And there's actually really great docs here in St. Louis that do that. And that's one of the things that I kept hearing in my clinical practice. Oh, I'm a mom, I have MTHFR, and my baby has tongue tie. So that means the baby can't latch on, can't good milk, can't good lactation and milk supply. So that's how I started coming along with this is like, wow, there's a clinical correlation with this. Then I started giving people, and I started researching this. What is this MTHFR thing? And I said, you need B9, which is folate. It's the activated form of folate. So there's a difference between folic acid and folate. And this is where a lot of the medical providers who are not in tune on this will say, you know what? Yeah, you just need to take large doses of folic acid. Folic acid is synthetic. It's man-made to mimic B9. So if you look at your prenatal, that's another tip your viewers can do. If they're taking a multivitamin, they can look at the back side of it and they can look and see what form of B9 am I taking? Is it folic acid? Is it folate? Is it methyl tetrahydrofolate? You want methylfolate really in there. But this is
that was like I just learned something like that in itself is such a huge key to walk away from, because in the restaurant industry, and we talk about reading labels and knowing what the ingredients are, and if you don't understand that, but terminology when it comes to a supplement, right, folate versus folic acid, mm-hmm, I wouldn't think that meant anything different.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because especially a lot of your viewers might have food sensitivities because they're eating so healthy and clean. Dairy can block folate receptors. So that's another key thing is that if you do have this gene and you have it, removing dairy can be a huge factor because you have these folate receptors waiting for waiting for that folate to actually log on to it. But if you're consuming lots and lots of dairy, that dairy can block that folate receptor, and so it can't get through. So next thing you know, you might have birth defects or blood clotting issues, so many symptoms with MTHFR. So, and going back to that question where you said, hey, it sounds like I should be taking a supplement for this. And in my journey, I said, yeah, you do need to take folate because you can't get it in. You know what, Becky? I screwed so many people up doing that. And I'm like, what? This doesn't make sense because I'm doing everything right. I'm reading that there should be, they should be taking methylfolate. But what happens is it's getting them way too much of one ingredient.
Okay.
And we're not looking at the rest of the picture.
Okay.
And so when you do things slow, some people respond really well to it. But in my practice, I work with more chronic people who have more issues, more impaired pathways. You got to start downstream a little bit further, kind of like a flood. If you're looking at the Mississippi, you got to clear things downstream so it doesn't back up into our tributaries, where we're at. And we have flooding in our backyards, which has been going on, but
okay. So let's take it from, because I have a feeling that many of the viewers probably know that they have it and maybe aren't working hand in hand or very closely with a functional medicine doctor or a doctor that's working with them. Mm-hmm. If somebody knows that they have it, what are can you give them 2 to 3 tips to start with? And it sounds like eliminating dairy completely is one of those first steps.
Yeah, and that really has to go with diet. And it's funny because Dr. Ben Lynch, and I don't know if your viewers or if you have seen this book. Have you seen this, Dirty Genes?
No, I have not.
This is fantastic. It just came out this year, and it's by Dr. Ben Lynch. He is super active especially since you're on Facebook right now. If your viewers can go to Dr. Ben Lynch, and he has all these Facebook lives. He is the leader in this, but he wrote this book on Dirty Genes, which gives you a recipe guide on what to do if you have these, they call them dirty genes. When you were born with them, if you were defected when you were born, or they can become dirty if you get into environmental toxicity, if you have food sensitivities. So some few tips just with if someone has MTHFR, what they can do is 1, start cleaning up their diet. And when I say cleaning up, clean eating is so variable.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm clean eating. What does that really mean, right?
Yeah.
Are you eating a ton of histamine foods and that is causing more inflammation to begin with? And it's like, wait a minute here. So, if your viewers are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, pick up this book because this is a great place to start. He highlights 7 of the genes, one of them being MTHFR. If you don't want to read and you're not a reader and you just want to take some tips away from this, I would say the first thing is gluten-free, dairy-free. And it goes with epigenetics. And epigenetics is basically all the factors, all the environmental things that impact how that gene is going to work. And that's stuff you can control. How you think, your stress, the food, if you're hydrating with water.
I say this all the time, and it took me actually going way off kilter with my eating this, a year ago. And getting to where I physically and mentally was just not in a clear state of mind and decided to super hyper clean it all up. And I tell everybody just 1 week of eliminating all gluten. I don't do a whole lot of dairy minus cheese. That's my big weakness. But I was super hyper clean, no dairy, no gluten, no sugars whatsoever. And in 1 week, just the mental clarity alone, along with how the inflammation in your body just decreases, and the energy just from 1 week of being super hyper conscious of it.
Yes, and that's so key. And I actually have a workshop that I just recorded I was doing called Methylation and Digestion, Optimizing MTHFR 1 bite at a time. That's where I start. When patients come to see me and they say, I have MTHFR, and I have people travel all over the world to see me. And they're like, okay, I have this. What should I do? And the first place is we got to start at your gut. We got to start with your gut, making sure you're absorbing things. So making sure hydrochloric acid is working so you can get the B12 from your foods. We got to make sure your liver is really, really working good because 80% of this methylation stuff, and this, I'm holding up a pathway planner from Dr. Ben Lynch. And it's so cool because if you're curious, if you're a science nerd like me and you want to follow, like you like pictures and numbers like me, you can go to his website and it has all of the pathways drawn out and he puts everything that makes the gene go fast or slower on it so you can really customize it. But bringing all of this stuff happens in your liver. So if you're going to drink a lot of alcohol, guess what's going to impact your MTHFR gene? It's going to go in the tank. So what we got to do, if you do decide to drink alcohol, you can bring in some more things to make your liver detoxify better. And that's going to optimize your MTHFR. Like B12, molybdenum is another little tip. I don't know if you've heard of molybdenum before. It's a nutrient and it's cheap. It's a mineral, and Seeking Health does sell it, and it's fantastic. Molybdenum.
Can you spell that for us?
Yeah, it's like Molly, MOLY, molybdenum, and it's molybdenum. It kind of looks like it says, but it's pronounced molybdenum. And it really helps clear sulfur pathways. So a lot of times people will drink alcohol and they'll get really red in the face. They might even take some certain supplements like turmeric and they'll get more red because it's a sulfur, even eggs, certain things that are a higher content in sulfur, it helps clear it. It helps you detox. So molybdenum is
now talking to me because that I've always wondered, mustard does that to me as well. Is when I eat a really strong mustard, I get very flushed. Now, Greg, my partner, says it's an Ayurvedic thing and it's just, heightening that side of things. But yeah, it's interesting how these are some great tips and points. I'm going to ask this question. Can you write this into a blog?
Yes. And I'm doing so. I'm starting to do so many more classes on this because I've been doing this for so long. When someone comes in front of me and they sit down, I can link it all back to these pathways. My brain is able to bring it in and kind of bring this stuff in, especially like infertility and miscarriage. I get so much of that in here. But think about what's happening in that. There's it's a pregnant uterus. It's a uterus with all these cells replicating, and you have a high demand for this gene. And your liver is huge with this because your liver filters all of your blood.
I've had a conversation with a couple of doctors. Actually, you've came up in conversation. There's a Dr. Felicity, I believe her name is. Do you know who?
Yeah, Felicity Keogh. Keogh Chiropractic.
She's reached out to me, and then Ryan and Jeannie, his wife, that I've had on the show as well, about doing a workshop with you three talking about trying to get pregnant, into the pregnancy, and then after pregnancy, how do you take care of yourself and get your hormones back into place? So that's kind of in the pipeline and on the radar as something that we may put together, pulling all of you guys in and playing a role in that. Because I feel, and through my own experience, I had no issues with fertility. I had no problems getting pregnant. And I was one of those that was on antidepressants prior to pregnancy. But when I got pregnant, it went the complete opposite. I had to go off of all antidepressants because I got depressed being on the antidepressants, had to come off of it. And then the reverse happened after I had my babies and I had postpartum really, really badly with both of them. So the hormones in pregnancy play a role in my personal life. And I've seen these stories time and time again. So I think that there is a need and that's being requested. So we might be gathering a group of you together and having a day workshop around that.
There's a demand. There sure is a demand because this is like, okay, I have this gene, but this is the biggest problem I think people have. They get this diagnosis from whoever they're going to, but it's not really discussed. It's just like, here, take this, or, oh, you don't need to worry about this, or only take this while you're pregnant and don't worry about it after pregnancy. It's like, wait a minute here. Let's bring all this into the picture and look at how relevant this is, because this is just one gene. That's one enzyme that I'm saying is clinically relevant. And that's the beauty that I like following Dr. Ben Lynch. Even if there's a provider listening to this or, that you're wanting to do more of this, what I encourage you to do is go to drbenlynch.com. He has symposiums that he puts on yearly. This year he came out with a book, but it's all online. You can pay for it and watch it, and it's biochemistry madness. But it gets you knowledgeable, honest.
Well, Emily, I want to thank you. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. If any of you that are listening have any questions, feel free to private message Emily or message me. You can also ask the questions through the comments. We're discreet when it comes to answering those questions because we don't want to talk about your personal health on live for everybody to see. But we do get a lot of people commenting and sending private messages afterwards. If you're interested, we have resources galore on our website from not only Emily, but other doctors and experts out there that we are tapping into. I'm Becky with Symbol. We offer the clean eating that all of these doctors are talking about. And this is our way of giving back to the community by educating and bringing those resources to you so that you can ask the questions on how you can live a more functioning and healthy life. Emily, thank you. Feel free in the comments, post your contact information and any other information that you talked about. Just add those links into the bottom of it.
Great. Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me, Becky.
Thank you.